The biggest mistake that a new Amazon seller can make is buying the wrong item that costs them thousands of dollars, or not even knowing how to source profitable items in the first place. So after spending over $2 million on products to sell in my Amazon store, today I'm peeling back the curtain. I'm going to show you every data point and common trap that I check before I buy an item to sell in my store. You're also going to be able to download my entire checklist for free, and we're going to source some profitable items together by using it. But let's start by looking at an example of a profitable product so that we can replicate more of this in today's video and source more products together, right? So take this product, for example. It is selling on Amazon right now for $29.90. And then over at the Target website, we're able to buy this exact same item for $11.39. So when I plug that into SellerAmp, I can see that this sells over 600 times a month, and I'm going to make about $6.50 profit on every single one of these sales. And before you ask, yes, that profit already does include sales tax, shipping, all that good stuff. I have it all baked into SellerAmp for me automatically so that I know I'm going to actually make a profit. And that definitely means that the first two items on the checklist are met. And that's that I need to make at least $3 profit on every item that I sell. And it needs to be at least a 35% ROI. That's what I like to look for to make sure that my item is going to be worth my time, worth putting in a box, and worth managing. The next thing I check out in an item is where I want to start looking at some different product examples. This is really important because we can't typically compete with Amazon on the Amazon platform. So typically I want to see that Amazon has been selling it for less than 25% of the last couple months. But let's look at a couple examples of products and see why this is such a bad idea, right? So take this like Lego set, for example. You can see when we look at the charts on SellerAmp, you see how there's a ton of orange highlighting. That means that Amazon is selling this product. And even further, when I look at the buy box analysis here, this shows me that on this listing, about 98% of the sales on this listing go to Amazon themselves. So it seems like they're hogging a lot of the sales on this product. If you compare that to the example that we started with, you can see lots of different third-party sellers making sales. You can see it rotating between different sellers as we speak. So 16 minutes ago, just now, lots of different Amazon sellers of all sizes are making sales. You can see this seller has literally no feedback and they're still able to make sales. That's a really good sign before you jump on an item to see lots of different size third-party sellers making sales. Check the buy box analysis. If you compare that to this listing where Amazon's on it, Amazon is hogging basically all the sales, and so there's not really any opportunity here. But that's not the end all be all. Sometimes you can actually compete with Amazon. So here, take this example where Amazon, same story, right? Amazon is all over this listing. You can see when I mouse over the SellerAmp chart right there, Amazon has been pretty consistently on there. But when I look at the buy box analysis, I can see that there's plenty of other third-party sellers who have been making sales on this item, right? So it's not a tried and true end all be all. If Amazon's on the listing, you can't sell it. Just make sure that Amazon's actually sharing sales with third-party sellers. And just in general, before you buy an item, make sure that there are sales being rotated to lots of different sellers, lots of different opportunity for anyone who lists that product. The next thing I like to look for is verifying that the item actually sells. Obviously, that's very important. And the nice part is that SellerAmp shows us how fast everything on Amazon sells. So we can see this over 900 times a month. I look for at least 30 sales per month on all the listings that I sell on. And that's also usually going to equate to about a 200,000 sales rank or below. Somewhere around 150,000, 200,000 should generally be the maximum sales rank that you look for. And you'll see that right there. So in this case, it's the 8,000th best-selling product in the grocery category right now. And with that in mind, I also want to take this a step further and show you how we can use an example of a profitable item to find a ton more winning items, right? So based on the fact that we know that all of the sellers on this listing, or at least a good amount of them, probably bought it at this Target sale here, there's going to be a great chance that a lot of the other sellers on this listing have also sourced profitable items from stores like Target, Walgreens, Vitacost, other trustworthy websites that we can pretty easily figure out, reverse source, and try to find maybe some coupons or whatever sale they use to actually create the profit on that item. So let's just go ahead and open up this storefront right here, and I'll show you what we mean, right? So as we open up the storefront, we can immediately see all their best brands, the categories that they like to sell, how many feedback they have, all the basic information that we need to see. And one thing that's extremely useful as we're trying to find profitable items now is I can see the maximum price that I need to pay for this product for me to meet those profit standards that we were talking about, right? So this example, I need to buy this UFC video game for $22 or less. And so if you don't know much about Amazon right now, open up as many listings as possible, see what costs are reasonable, see what costs are going to be way too high, right? So in this example, I click the Google button. That basically just Googles that product for me, and I can see, looks like basically everywhere this is a $35 item. So it's going to be hard for, even if I find a coupon or something like that, it's going to be hard for me to get this for $22, right? Let's take this Bass Pro Shops hat, for example, right? I don't know much about these hats. I bet it's more than $5 just based on basic intuition there. It's actually pretty close. That's cheaper than I expected it to be. So we can take so let's see. So this is $19 on Amazon. And then the same hat is actually $6 over here at Bass Pro Shop. So we can see if we plug in $6 there, we do make 43% ROI, but the profit isn't quite as high as I generally like to look for. more. And I can see over the past history of this item, it does actually seem interesting, right? I can see that there was some sellers on it for $25 for a while, but right now it's not quite meeting that profit standard. So let's go ahead and keep moving on and see what we can find. So we're obviously not paying negative dollars for this item. Let's keep trucking there. That to me just looks like it's going to cost more than $2.30. We can see, yeah, these could be interesting, but 6-pack of these for $1.85, I find that kind of unlikely. Let's see. So we got like some seasoning here. This could be interesting, and some kind of playset or something. Not sure exactly what's going on there, but usually you're just buying good data on items, right? That's the nice part, is we don't really have to know too much about the items that we're buying. And actually, this seems like it could have been profitable, although it seems like it's out of stock now. So you see how this is 20 bucks, and then over on SellerAmp, the maximum price is $19.50. So it's really close to profit, quite in that case though. This is just like some seasonings though, so we could be making some money there. And yeah, actually this looks great. I can see here's like the Chex Party Mix seasoning, but a lot of you guys are going to be diving into this kind of stuff, cooking for the holidays, that kind of thing. And this is a 6-pack, and we can buy these for 24 cents each. So let's go ahead and just open this up here and dig a little bit deeper. And this is actually interesting. Usually I don't have too much success selling cheaper items, but since we're getting it super cheap here, we definitely can. So we're getting these for 24 cents each. We're buying 6 of them. And so we can actually spend $1.44 to make $4 in profit. This is actually a fantastic kind of holiday item right here. You can see that sales rank is being nice and low. So in the grocery category, we also don't have to deal with any returns or any expenses on that front there. So this is actually a great example, very high ROI product. And it's all just because we started with an item that kind of had some history of selling decently well. And now this obviously meets our standards of 30 times a month, $3 profit, 35% ROI. And so with all that in mind, now you know how to find actual winning products. Let's go ahead and keep heading down the list here so you can see the slightly more complicated things that I like to look out for as I'm sourcing products. And the next thing is going to be that the Keepa shows a very consistent price. So the Keepa chart is basically the next tool that you need to sell products on Amazon. When I look at items like this, I can see that that price chart is pretty consistent. Basically right now is the cheapest it's ever been on Amazon. So that tells me that we don't run too much risk of the price going a whole lot lower. It does look like there's a good amount of new sellers hopping on this listing. So if you're, thinking of simple supply and demand economics there, more supply might make the price go lower. But since it's the holidays, I can see this middle line right here, the yellow line on the Keepa, that's showing me the monthly sold. That's consistently going up along with new sellers. So there's something that justifies that price might stay somewhat stable. So again, if we see something like this, you can see basically the cheapest that these like Hershey Kisses we started with, cheapest they have been is around like $21 or so, maybe. So like right down there for a couple days, it went to 20 bucks. So our worst case scenarios, we make $3.30 profit. So just look for kind of consistent pricing. One thing that I like to keep in mind, some bonus points here, is if you look at the SellerAmp right here and you go to average 90 days, it's going to show you the average price over the last 90 days. And if I'm profitable at that average price, that means that on average, I'm still making money. And so that's just one of those nice things that I like to look at, where an item is going to be a little bit more consistent and stay profitable for longer. But with that in mind, the next thing on the checklist that I really like to avoid is when there's a huge number of new sellers on the Keepa chart, with that caveat that like the holiday items, it's obviously going into the holidays, so it's selling a lot faster. There's a reason for that price to stay high. And so let's compare that to an example like this, where you can see how recently little like slippers right here, we can get these on sale for right around $12.75 after this coupon right here. Right now, this would be, it's a decent item, right? So we make decent ROI, decent profit, not a home run by any means, but I can see that this has more sellers like right now than it basically ever has ever before. And I can see last time there was this many sellers, that price just kept dropping to where I would no longer be profitable. So if you ever see a super quick increase in seller count without there being like a real reason for the price to stay stable, that's something that I typically like to avoid. And if you do want to buy one of those items that's a little bit riskier where the new seller count is going up a lot, I would really just encourage you to do merchant fulfillment on that listing. So merchant fulfillment, you basically buy the item, you ship it to your house, and then as soon as you list it, you can ship it to a customer when they buy it, versus FBA where we're waiting for FBA check-in times where we put it all in a box, ship it off to Amazon. It takes 2 to 3 weeks to start making sales. If you want to capitalize on limited time opportunity, then doing FBM is definitely the way to go there. The next thing on my checklist that I like to look for is to make sure that the item is not being sold by the brand owner already. So this should be a relatively quick check. Take this item, for example. I look at the offers tab. I can see Momentous US is selling this item. Momentous is the brand name, easy to avoid. And the reason we want to avoid that is if we compete with a brand that clearly cares about their Amazon listing, they're clearly selling on that listing, they don't want to have to share sales with other random third-party resellers. And so they're probably going to kick you off that listing, might get stuck with some inventory, have to prove that you bought legitimate inventory, all that kind of stuff, right? It's also not just if the brand themselves is selling that listing. If you ever see a listing where there's basically only been one seller super consistently on that item, so you see down here on this chart right here, see there's basically always been one seller. Seems like somebody tried to sell it there for a couple hours and they immediately got kicked off. That is clear to me that there is a seller that's controlling this listing, even though in this case it's sold by Pattern, which is a huge company that partners like directly with a lot of brands. Pattern doesn't obviously obviously match balance of nature, but I can see that it very consistently has only had one seller on that listing. So avoid anything where the brand's on it, or there's basically always only one seller on the listing, because you probably get kicked off. And on that same theme, also make sure that it's not a brand that's known for giving out IP complaints. So within SellerAmp, sometimes if you look at an IP complaining brand, there'll be an alert that says IP here. The private label alert is also pretty useful. It's basically an indicator that very few people have historically sold this item. So obviously this was a private label item. SellerAmp is telling us that it's private label. There's also a good free resource you can check for this called Seller Journal Greenlight. So if I look at a brand that I know is notorious for giving out IP complaints, like Kong, like a dog toy brand, you can say they're well known for taking legal action, avoid at all costs, bigger fish in the sea, that kind of thing. There's just like a free resource you can check there. So between SellerAmp and Seller Journal Greenlight, usually I like to get a second opinion if you want to be extra safe about it. I've also used IP Alert in the past to hook up with a nice little discount code there as well if you want to check that out. Basically another tool, just a different database of brands that store brands that give you IP complaints potentially. But at the end of the day, just look at the listing and see if there's a ton of third-party sellers on it. There's been a ton of third-party sellers consistently, probably somewhat safe to sell. The next thing that I personally like to avoid, this is up to you. I'm gonna bundle these together here. So anything that is like super heavy, multi-pack of liquids, or just a really heavy item in general, personally, I try to avoid those items. Number one, they can be really easy to break open, that kind of thing. Take this, for example, if you shipped one of these 24 packs of Arizona teas in here and the warehouse worker isn't so careful with it, they throw it against the floor or something and some of the cans get dinged up, it can break open, leak all over everything, just make a big mess. And on these really heavy items, it can be pretty difficult to actually make a profit. So like right here, I could literally pay $0 for this item and I'm still not profitable selling it for $47 because it's so heavy, right? It's like a 38-pound product in this example. So for me personally, just after 6 years of selling on Amazon, I like to avoid super heavy items for the reason it's going to break open. And let's say the price doesn't end up going the way you want it to, you have to make some losses, that kind of thing. If you ever have to start cutting your losses on a really heavy item, it's going to hurt even worse because the shipping cost you so much, the fees to ship to the end customer is going to be so expensive. So it just makes any mistakes or any bad product buys way more amplified. And for me, at least in the past, it just hasn't been super worth it. The next thing you want to check is going to apply if it is going into the spring summer months or currently in the spring summer months as you're watching this video. So for example, one just super quick thing to look out for is on SellerAmp, if it says that it's a meltable item, just keep in mind that you can't send that item to Amazon FBA, because if you ship chocolate to Amazon in July, they're not going to ship it out in like a refrigerated bag. These chocolate bars right here are going to turn into an absolute chocolate soup. Customer's not going to be super happy with that. And so you want to avoid items that are meltable. Typically for me, I like to avoid anything that's meltable between March 1st and October 1st, the meltable season where you're actually allowed to sell meltables products. The meltable season where you're actually not allowed to sell anything meltable via FBA is actually April 15th to October 15th. But this for me, I just don't want to buy anything that in the next 6 weeks, I'm going to basically have to sell out and get rid of, that kind of thing. Fun fact though, on the consumer side of things, there's a ton of really cheap chocolate on Amazon from like April 10th to April 15th, as all the Amazon sellers are trying to slash prices and sell out before Amazon basically automatically removes all those products back to Amazon sellers. So if you're into snacking on some chocolates, that kind of thing, there's a fun fact for you today. The next thing you want to think about on your checklist is that you're including all the extra fees that you're going to be incurring as you're buying items. So I have this all baked into my SellerAmp like I've been talking about. So I include some fees on these settings back here. So a miscellaneous fee of 10 cents or so, that's going to cover that particular item's cost as far as the box, maybe a poly bag that I have to buy. I include 5% as sales tax, just as an example in the video. Obviously change this fee percentage to whatever your state sales tax is if you don't want to forget about it. And then for me, I pay about 60 cents per pound to ship to Amazon. If you're making a lot of really small shipments, you might consider making this closer to 80 cents a pound, but bake those fees into your SellerAmp so you don't forget about it and you actually make profit after it's all said and done. The next thing you want to look for is to make sure that the item is not hazmat or dangerous goods. So when you're logged into Seller Central on any other tab and you look at an item, it will tell you in the alerts panel if it's dangerous goods or hazmat. So butane fuel, great example of something that would be, considered a hazardous material. You can sell these products on Amazon. Just make sure that if you sell them via FBM, you're following PS, USPS, FedEx, you're following whatever the rules are there. And then you can actually also send hazmat items to Amazon FBA. But before you do that, you have to get a special approval with Amazon. So if you're curious about how to get that dangerous goods approval, just search like dangerous goods on the top bar of Amazon Seller Central. There'll be a nice article that shows you how to get on the wait list, that kind of thing. Just keep in mind, if you're not already approved for the hazmat program, then you won't be able to send items like this into Amazon FBA. So just one more thing to think about. And then also, before you actually pull the trigger on items to buy, make sure that your supplier is actually somewhat trustworthy. So for me, I always plug my supplier website into Trustpilot if it's something I've never heard of. Obviously, like Walgreens, everybody's heard of Walgreens. Walgreens is a real company. You can buy from Walgreens. Sometimes you'll come across some small mom and pop sites, and I'll plug that into Trustpilot. Another good thing is if you look at the checkout and they accept PayPal, that can be a good way to make sure that they are somewhat legit. It's really easy to get your money back through PayPal PayPal if you don't get what you paid for. And so if it's a scam website, they're not going to offer PayPal at checkout. And then if you're really not sure if that website is legit or not, that's why it's important to be in just like some free communities. We've got a free Discord down below. It also has a whole free course in there. You can put the feelers out. Has anybody bought from XYZ website before? Somebody will probably know what's going on there. That's also one of the many reasons why it's so important to have some other Amazon seller friends that you're able to talk to, meet some people in free groups, talk to people on social media, whatever you got to do to meet some people in your life that don't think that the whole sell on Amazon thing is crazy. Especially for a lot of us, I assume that your friends and family think you're weird for doing this whole Amazon thing. So just get out there and talk to other people who are also getting out of their comfort zone and selling on Amazon as well. And then this last thing obviously should be pretty obvious. Make sure that the items you're buying are exactly the same. Sometimes it can be updating packaging, all that kind of thing. It can be a new picture, but especially if it is food, vitamin, all that kind of stuff, clothing, make sure that the fabric blend is the same, make sure that the ingredients are the same, all that kind of stuff. Checking for a matching UPC is also a really good way to go about it. See if you can confirm that even though it might be a new picture on the front of the bag, that the ingredients are still the same through the UPC matching. And you just don't want to have any unhappy customers at the end of the day, basically. So once again, if you want that full free checklist to follow along as you're sourcing, I'll leave it down below. It's completely free. Also, make sure you have a 2-week free trial of SellerAmp activated. That'll be down below so you can actually start sourcing products like we were doing today. And then if you also want to make your Amazon business run more efficiently on the shipping side of things, tracking your profit analytics, that's where you'll want to use a software called Boxem. You can check that one out down below for free as well. If you found this useful, also hit the subscribe button. That's a great free way to help me out for adding some value to your business today. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, anything like that. Always happy to chat with you guys down below. But I really appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time.